In the previous lesson, we saw how we can work with different type of assets in NATRON. We use the PNG files, JPEG, and vector graphics, movies, images, and different types of multimedia. So in this video, I want to show you how you can actually do some like vector graphics drawing, and you can create shapes in NATRON directly. There are other possibilities like Inkscape or Illustrator, but also we can do it in here with the Roto tools or Rotopaint tools. So I'm going to go here and start with a simple rectangle. Before continuing, I want to just point out some few things. So when I create a rectangle, I can reshape the rectangle right here directly in the viewer. And this is not actually a vector graphics properly, but it's kind of it's similar because it's parametric. So I can change this dynamically. So I can increase the corner radius, for example. And also, if I increase it a lot, it's going to give me like an ellipse or a circle. Now, this depends on the size and on the radius corner of the corner. So if I type here like 500 and 500, now this is going to be like a perfect circle because I'm rounding that rectangle more than the actual size. I can also increase the softness if I want nice borders, and that's going to give me a nice blur on the edge, which kinds of also simulates a little bit the motion blur because moving objects usually they have this motion blur effect. But also I want to show you that later on in the video. So if I change this right now, this is a shape, and I can even make this bigger. If you see if I make it bigger, the rounder, the corner radius, the rounder corners, they're not enough. So usually to have the perfect circle here using the rectangle, we need to put at least like half of the distance of the width and the height. So I can move this around. I can animate it just by changing the pivot, the insertion point. I can animate the corner radius, I can animate the softness, I can animate basically anything as we saw. Now this is again not yet vector graphics, but it's similar, it's parametric. So if I change the parameters here, I can, scale it, resize it as many times as I want. It's not gonna lose the quality. It's just gonna, be nice and perfect. So if I move this around, move in the timeline, it's gonna record the keyframes as we already know, as we already saw previously. So you can see it's recording now the changing of the position and the size. I don't have rotation here, only movement and size. So I can now get rid of those keyframes because I want to show you also the motion blur. So for the motion blur, you need to have an actual movement caused by a transform node. So if I select again this rectangle, which is not a rectangle anymore, it's a circle, I can type the T key on the keyboard and create a transform node. And I just touched this topic previously, but I want to show you nicely and clearly how you can do a motion blur effect. So first of all, you need to have movement. You need to define here a starting point. So let's put like 0 here, directly typing 0 for the first keyframe. You need to activate, of course, the recording of the keys, as we already know. And then this needs to be like a really speed up, a really fast object. If you don't have enough speed, you're not gonna see the motion blur. So I put here like 24, so this is kind of 1 second of animation at 24 frames per second. And if I press play, well, there is no motion blur right now. We only have the blur of the edges that we applied using the softness value. So to have a clear motion blur effect, we need to do something else. Now, you can see also the gizmos here. The gizmos are really handy because they will help you to manipulate the object. But if you don't want them, you can right click anywhere in the viewer and click here, show hide overlays. So now you have a clear visual of what you are doing. So sometimes they're better to it's better to have heads-up display overlays. Other times, you just want to get rid of them to see what's happening in the animation without any distraction. Now the motion blur is right there. This value here, if you just increase it slightly, like 0.1, it's going to start to give you a nice motion blur. You can see it right there. So if I move this around, now you can see this is not a perfect circle anymore. It's kind of being distorted by the movement. Well, this is how our eyes perceive movement in real life. Like, leaving a short tail, like having it, not being like perfectly sharp, but having this blur on the sides. And in the cameras, this is also, well, you can also increase the quality of the motion blur if you go all the way up to 4. That's just going to give you a better looking motion blur. But remember, this is a heavy effect if you start to use it like on many different things or complex stuff. So this is why I showed you this simple circle. This is also another option, directional blur mode. And then you have shutter. Now, like in cameras, this depends on the shutter speed. So if I decrease the shutter value, it means the shutter is going to be quicker and you're going to have less motion blur. If I increase the shutter value, you're going to have a slower shutter speed, and then you're going to have more motion blur. So it's like in real life, adjusting the shutter speed of your camera. So now that I increase that a lot, you can see that now the motion blur effect, it's really, visible. But also depends on the speed. So if I increase the speed of the object also, it's going to give you a more motion blur effect. Now I want to add an image here just by clicking and dragging inside. And I can use any shape and turn it into a mask in NATRON. We already saw this, but I just want to show you again. And I want to make like a binocular example, or like, looking through a peephole or something like that. So if I create another merge node by pressing M, and I apply this to the mask, now the object is masking the image. Now let's increase the size, because when you bring the image in, it's going to take the size of the image. So if we want to see this a little bit bigger and see a little bit more of the image, I can increase the size of the square of the rectangle. So let's make it like, there you go, 1060. And then again, we can see the corner radius because there's not enough fillet or rounded corners. But you can see now, if I move around, I can still see the motion blur effect, but now it's also a mask. So it's kind of combining the effects. So if I go here in the corner radius, I type here 800, that's going to be okay. You can see it's half of the size that rectangle have right now to have a perfect circle. Now, if I want to create a binocular, I need another rectangle, but I'm not going to drop it in there because that's, you can see, is not going to show up. So I will, even if I move this, let me see here, let's type something on the X, like 100, you can see it's not doing it. So the good way to do this, let me show you. Okay, let's start all over. So I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and then I'm gonna make this rounded. There you go. You can see the movement here and the motion blur. So instead of creating, let me adjust the corner radius of 800. Okay, and instead of linking the rectangle directly in the transform, I want to copy and paste the node. Also want to increase a little bit the softness of the edges. And then I want to copy the rectangle and paste it, but I'm gonna link it to the other rectangle. So again, select, Control C, Control V, and there you go. Now I'm going to link it inside the other rectangle.